You go into the conversation trying to win instead of trying to understand, which makes the other person defensive and escalates tension. When we treat a hard conversation like a debate, we immediately put the other person on the opposite side, and that energy can be felt before we even speak. The tone of our voice, the posture we hold, even the choice of words we use sends the signal that we are gearing up for a battle. The other person feels that pressure and instinctively responds with resistance because no one wants to lose. The problem is, the second the conversation becomes about winning, it stops being about resolving the issue. It turns into a competition where both sides are trying to be right instead of trying to find a solution that works for both. When you enter a tough conversation with that mindset, your brain starts filtering everything through the lens of proving your point. You start listening only for what you can respond to instead of truly hearing what the other person is saying. Every pause becomes an opening to jump in. Every word they say becomes ammunition to counter. It becomes less about connecting and more about scoring points. This is where most conversations start to go wrong, because once both sides are focused on being right, no one is focused on moving forward. The entire discussion turns into a cycle of attack and defense, leaving everyone frustrated and emotionally drained. The truth is, most of us don't realize we are doing this. We think we are just standing up for ourselves, holding our ground, and making sure we are respected. But the intention to protect yourself can easily slip into the desire to overpower the other person. It becomes about getting the last word, getting the apology, getting them to admit they were wrong. That might feel satisfying in the moment, but it rarely leads to lasting peace. The other person might give in verbally just to end the conversation, but internally they are still holding on to their perspective, and the tension remains beneath the surface. Instead of approaching the conversation like a fight to win, you need to shift your mindset toward curiosity and collaboration. This doesn't mean you roll over or let the other person walk all over you. It means you lead with a calm, controlled presence that invites the other person to share openly. The goal is no longer to prove that you are right, but to understand what is driving them and to communicate what is driving you. When you do this, you lower their defenses because they no longer feel attacked. The energy of the conversation softens and real dialogue can happen. You may find that once you let go of the need to win, you actually feel more in control of yourself. You are not pulled into reacting impulsively or trying to land verbal punches. You are focused, steady, and intentional with every word you say. This presence can completely change the tone of the conversation because people respond to calmness with calmness. When the other person feels heard, they are far more likely to hear you back. The problem starts to become something you are solving together instead of something you are fighting each other about. Learning to shift from winning to understanding takes practice, but it is one of the most powerful ways to stop botching hard conversations. It starts with recognizing the moment you are slipping into debate mode and choosing to slow down, breathe, and redirect the focus. It is about letting go of the scorecard in your mind and remembering that the goal is resolution, not victory. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes, and soon even the hardest conversations start to feel less like battles and more like opportunities for connection and clarity. You avoid saying what you truly mean out of fear of conflict, causing miscommunication and resentment to build up later. When you silence yourself, you think you are keeping the peace, but what you are really doing is delaying the storm. The feelings you swallow do not go away. They just sit under the surface, waiting for the right moment to explode. Instead of having a short, honest conversation now, you end up having a bigger and more heated one later, because all that emotion eventually finds its way out. Avoidance feels easier in the moment, but it always costs more in the long run because it creates confusion, tension, and distance between you and the other person. When you hold back what you really want to say, you are not giving the other person a fair chance to know what is going on with you. They cannot adjust to something they do not know about. You start expecting them to read your mind, and when they do not, you feel let down or unappreciated. This pattern builds resentment because it seems like they do not care, when in reality they may not even be aware of the problem. By not expressing your thoughts, you unintentionally teach people that what they are doing is okay, which only makes the situation worse over time. The fear of conflict often comes from the idea that speaking up will make things worse. But most of the time, the opposite is true. Honest communication might feel uncomfortable, but it is the only way to prevent misunderstandings from turning into bigger problems. You cannot solve what you will not face. Every time you bite your tongue, you miss the chance to create clarity and boundaries. You also miss the chance to build trust, because people trust you more when they know you will tell them the truth even when it is hard. Being direct does not mean being harsh or disrespectful. It means finding the courage to say what is on your heart in a way that is calm and constructive. You do not have to attack or blame the other person to express how you feel. You can focus on sharing your perspective and what you need moving forward. This helps the other person feel less attacked and more open to listening. When you do this consistently, you build a habit of clean communication where issues are dealt with quickly instead of allowed to fester. It is also important to remember that avoiding conflict is not just about avoiding arguments with others. It is also about avoiding the discomfort within yourself. Hard conversations make you face your own feelings, your own needs, and sometimes your own mistakes. That can be hard to sit with, which is why people choose to stay silent. But the more you run from that discomfort, the more power it has over you. Facing it head on gives you back control and allows you to speak from a grounded and honest place. Breaking this habit takes practice, but it starts with paying attention to the moments you hold back and asking yourself why. Notice where in your body you feel the tension when you are about to speak, but stop yourself. That awareness can give you the courage to go ahead and share what is true for you. Over time, it becomes easier to be open even when it feels uncomfortable, and the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. The reward is healthier relationships, clearer boundaries, and fewer explosive conversations later on because everything gets addressed before it has the chance to build into something bigger. You let emotions take over in the moment instead of regulating yourself, which leads to overreacting, blaming, or shutting down. When a conversation feels tense, your nervous system immediately goes on high alert and prepares you to defend yourself. Your heart rate picks up, your breathing changes, and your body feels like it is under attack. In that state, your brain has less access to logic and more access to fight or flight instincts. That is why it feels so easy to lash out, say something you regret, or completely shut down and withdraw from the conversation. The problem is, once your emotions take control, the conversation is no longer about finding solutions. It becomes about survival. When you are in this emotional state, even small comments can feel like huge personal attacks. You stop hearing the full context of what the other person is saying and instead focus on the tone, the word choice, or how it makes you feel. Your mind begins to create stories about their intentions, assuming the worst and fueling more anger or hurt. This creates a cycle where you react not just to what was said, but to what you think they meant, which escalates things even further. By the time you calm down later, you often realize the situation was not as extreme as it felt in the moment. Letting emotions take over can also make you say things that are out of proportion to the situation. You may bring up past issues, exaggerate the current problem, or use words meant to sting instead of to solve. This not only damages the relationship, but also makes it harder to repair trust after the conversation ends. The other person might focus more on how you delivered the message than on the message itself. This means even if you had a valid point, it gets lost because the conversation became about your reaction instead of the original issue. On the other hand, shutting down completely is just as harmful because it leaves the other person feeling unheard and dismissed. Silence can feel like punishment to them, which can make them push harder, leading you to retreat even more. This creates a standoff where nothing gets resolved and both sides leave feeling frustrated and disconnected. Emotional regulation is not about ignoring your feelings, it is about managing them in a way that allows you to stay engaged and present without being overwhelmed by them. Learning to regulate your emotions starts with noticing when you are getting triggered and taking a pause before reacting. Something as simple as slowing down your breathing, taking a short break, or grounding yourself physically can help bring your body back to a calmer state. When you are calmer, your brain can think more clearly and you can choose your words more carefully. You are then able to respond instead of react, which makes the conversation far more productive and respectful for both people involved. This skill takes practice, but each time you choose to pause and regulate instead of letting emotions run wild, you strengthen your ability to stay steady under pressure. Over time, you build confidence in your ability to handle tough moments without losing control. People also notice this change and begin to trust that conversations with you will stay constructive instead of turning into arguments. The more you train yourself to stay calm in the middle of emotional conversations, the easier it becomes to focus on solutions, maintain respect, and keep the relationship intact even when the topic is hard. You fail to listen actively and focus only on what you want to say next, making the other person feel unheard and disconnected. When you are only waiting for your turn to speak, you are not really listening. You are just preparing your counter-argument. The other person can feel this because there is a difference between someone who is truly engaged and someone who is mentally rehearsing their next point. This makes them feel dismissed and disrespected, even if that is not your intention. Conversations break down quickly when one side feels like they are talking to a wall instead of to a person who cares. Active listening is more than just staying quiet while the other person speaks. It is about paying full attention to their words, their tone, and their body language so you can understand the meaning behind what they are saying. When you are fully present, you catch the little details that reveal what is really bothering them. You are able to pick up on emotions they might not be saying out loud, and this helps you respond in a way that shows empathy. But when you skip this step and jump straight to your own point, you miss critical information that could have helped solve the problem faster. Focusing only on your response turns the conversation into a competition of who can speak the loudest or make the strongest case. This creates a cycle where both sides are talking, but no one is hearing each other. The louder one person pushes, the louder the other pushes back, and soon the original issue gets buried under a pile of defensiveness and frustration. This is why so many hard conversations feel like they go in circles and never reach a resolution, because no one is actually slowing down long enough to truly understand the other side. When you practice active listening, you give the other person the gift of feeling heard. This does not mean you have to agree with everything they say, but it shows them that their perspective matters enough for you to take it seriously. This often softens their tone and makes them more open to hearing your point of view in return. People are far more willing to meet you halfway when they believe you have made an effort to understand where they are coming from. Active listening also helps you regulate your own emotions because you are shifting your focus from defending yourself to learning more about the situation. Instead of reacting impulsively, you are gathering information and processing it before responding. This pause creates space for more thoughtful communication and reduces the chance of saying something you regret. You are also able to address the real issue instead of just the surface-level complaint, which leads to a more meaningful resolution. Building this habit takes patience and practice, especially if you are used to jumping in quickly with your own thoughts. It might feel slow at first to stop and really absorb what the other person is saying, but the payoff is huge. The more you practice listening with full presence, the more trust you build in your relationships. The other person begins to feel safer bringing things up to you because they know they will be met with attention instead of dismissal. Over time, this makes even hard conversations smoother because both sides know they will get a chance to speak and be heard before solutions are explored. You pick the wrong timing or setting for the talk, turning what could be a productive discussion into a stressful confrontation. When a conversation is started at the wrong moment, the other person may not be in the right mindset to receive it well. They might already be tired, distracted, or focused on something else, which makes them less patient and less willing to engage calmly. Even if what you have to say is important, the timing can make it land in the wrong way and trigger a defensive reaction. Choosing the right moment is just as important as choosing the right words because people process things better when they are mentally available. The environment where the conversation happens matters just as much as the timing. Having a serious discussion in a public place or in front of other people can make the other person feel cornered or embarrassed. This often causes them to shut down or push back harder because they feel the need to protect their image. On the other hand, having the conversation in a private and calm setting creates a sense of safety, which makes them more likely to open up and be honest. The setting you choose sets the emotional tone for the entire interaction before a single word is even spoken. Picking the wrong time also includes choosing moments when emotions are running high. Trying to talk about a sensitive issue in the middle of an argument usually does not go well because both sides are already reactive. When tempers are hot, logic goes out the window and words come out sharper than intended. Waiting until both people have calmed down allows the conversation to be more thoughtful and less fueled by adrenaline. It may feel tempting to address something right away, but taking a pause can actually protect the relationship and prevent unnecessary damage. It is also important to check your own readiness before starting the conversation. Sometimes we rush into a discussion when we are not yet clear about what we want to say or what we hope to achieve. This leads to rambling, blaming, or bringing up unrelated issues that confuse the other person. Preparing yourself mentally helps you communicate with clarity and keeps the conversation focused. When you are grounded, you can guide the discussion in a way that is productive rather than chaotic. Another mistake is choosing to talk only when you reach your breaking point. This usually means the conversation is fueled by built-up frustration and comes out too intense. Instead of calmly expressing what bothers you, you end up dumping all of your emotions at once, which overwhelms the other person. This can make them defensive and less willing to listen, even if your points are valid. Addressing issues earlier, when they are still small, prevents them from becoming explosive later. Learning to choose the right time and place takes patience, but it makes a huge difference in how the conversation turns out. It means paying attention to the other person's state of mind, your own emotional state, and the environment you are in. The goal is to create conditions where both people feel safe enough to engage and open enough to listen. When the timing and setting are right, even difficult topics can be handled with calmness and respect, leading to solutions that actually stick and relationships that grow stronger.